task and just go through the description and my completion criteria. For my rain effects, as you saw in the gameplay, it's just a prototype environmental rain, such as like I was gonna do a mist, like with kind of like a ripple effect and splash on the ground, but I just felt like it was too much that I didn't need um, like a whole bunch of different visuals. Also, I'm not a visual designer, and for the completion for this is the FX activates across the zones, which they do. The rain enhances the tone immersion. I feel like it makes it more immersive, and also the performance didn't drop at all, so the performance remained stable. A Vestige Audio, it is a simple audio cue of when you activate the sphere or trigger the sphere, and that's all it was. So once you trigger the sphere, the sound plays. It doesn't stack, and it is easily replaceable for when we actually get this video or not video, this game fully finished. It is easily replaceable. The enemies sounds, you are able to hear them throughout the entire map. If you, which means if you are on one side of the map and the enemy was on the other side, you could hear them run around and like hear all their movements, which we didn't want. So I went in and fixed the that bug. But for the description, the our enemies, they lacked our audio feedback during like attacking, running. Like you'd always hear it, and I described it as it may be caused by missing no notifies, or like just audio components have been unbound, and they make sound constantly no matter the distance. So the expected result for this was that the AI emits sound appropriate at appropriate combat states or when they're around you. The actual result for it, as I mentioned, they constantly emitted sound, breaking the loop. All you had to do was just load into the game, and you'd be able to hear them run around. I'd say it was a medium disruption. And for completion criteria, the audio cues fire at correct moments now. The animation notifies are verified, and debug confirms proper playback. A subtle onboarding moment near my shrine, using lighting, camera cues, and the minimal UI to teach that there are the blue doors, which are my markings. And for completion criteria for that is a intuitive environmental storytelling, player guided to the vestige via setup, which I guided the player to a vestige. So and there was no heavy scripting required for this. I just couldn't figure it out. Like I tried multiple ways and it just never worked. So this bug still occurs. It's not a game-breaking bug, so it's all right. But description: the trigger vestige here, near or on all my doors, can be opened by the door instead of the sphere. So the conclusion criteria for this one is door activation delayed until player input, sphere and door events clear separated, and debug confirms correct flow. Reworked the code to try and figure out a way around this, and obviously, as I said, I couldn't, but I did rework the code so it activates a little differently. The color of the dissolve is different, just a little tweaks here and there, but I wasn't able to get the main focus of the bug done. That's one of the main reasons I was doing a rework, but I still couldn't figure out. But I did rework my logic, and it was for the better. But for the description, refactored blueprint so the vestige sphere activates the door and sound cue and shader. The linked door should remain dormant until the player completes an interaction with the sphere. The sphere activates the door / visual and audio effect, and the door requires conditional logic to unlock, and debug confirms flow separation. For my vestige pulse shader, that is the pulsing you saw from beneath the orb. The description is apply proximity-based shader to vestige spheres using temporary debug textures and loop timers to simulate evolving visual feedbacks, which is why it's constantly pulsating upwards. The shader should respond dynamically to the player's approach and convey increasing clarity or intensity. I didn't actually implement, like if it grows stronger or faster. I just kind of kept it at one constant speed. But there is a sound to it. I'm sure it's one of my other tasks that I had designed for. But designed for performance efficiency and modularity to ensure easy replacement during the final. Because maybe I want like a different asset or a different texture, so it's easily replaceable. For my completion criteria for this is the shader responds dynamically to player proximity. It transitions between sounds on a distant threshold. The loop timers trigger rhythmic effects such as pulsing or distortion, which it does. It did not have any performance hits. And the debug textures convey shader states. Each visual state is distinct, which is the pulsing and the actual blue texture on it. And it's easily swappable, as I said. And the player feedback confirms the behavior or the intuitive behavior to walk up to the sphere to interact with it. My zone balancing, for description, is balance density, difficulty, and resources such as my trees, rocks, and grass across zones. Mount Solus favors enduring pacing, and Anomaly Grove favors burst encounters and loot. But for endurance pacing, for Mount Solus, is extended traversal and combat duration. It's like slower loot, fast or slower. Like traversal, there's more to it, and more duration or more combat, which they get more HP. And then more environmental storytelling between encounters. And for Anomaly Grove, it is brief and intense combat bursts, so it's fast, you're in and out of combat, and it's concentrated on more loot. There's more loot in my Anomaly Grove, and it's frequent shifts in terrain and tone, which was why there was so much shifting, as I said, in the terrain. And for burst encounters on my Mount Solus is rare but powerful enemy ambushes requiring damage management because they had increased HP for Mount Solus. And then Anomaly Grove, it was frequent fast-paced fights that test reflexes and ability cycling because there was a lot more enemies even though they had less health. And for the emotional tone, it's the Mount Solus is isolating, contemplative, and it invokes persistence and tension. The Anomaly Grove, surreal, chaotic behavior, or kind of chaotic environment, and blends wonder with unpredictability. My strategic tone for Mount Solus was encourages resource conservation and route planning, because, as I said, the fights were longer, so resource conservation. And for Anomaly Grove, the pushes and improvisation, quick decisions, and risk-reward dynamics. The completion criteria for this one is zones match intended emotional / strategic tone. There's no bottlenecks in pacing, and the passive placements reinforce exploration, because that was one of the things that we wanted was exploration. So for the fight time calibration, this was another thing that I used with playtesting. I wanted to keep fights long, to keep them longer or shorter for each zone. So for description is 2 enemy stats. So Shrine Guardians fight lasts around 90 seconds, and Echo Wraith encounters last 20 to 30 seconds. Incorporate playtest feedback to validate and refine these durations, and ensuring combat feels fair, rewarding, and fit to progression pacing. By completion criteria, it is timers aligned with pacing benchmarks across multiple play styles and playtests. Combat feels satisfying with enemies offering meaningful resistance. I adjusted stats to improve rhythm, agency, and flow across my level progression. Player feedback indicates encounters feel intentional and not artificially prolonged or cut short. And my map, in the first phase of my level design, or my level, I didn't like how it turned out. So for one of my tasks, I actually redesigned my entire map. But for the description, it creates a 2D map. I had to create a 2D map layout with rain-soaked cliffs, frozen lake, a monastery, and enemy zones, including pacing bubbles and traversal arrows. But for completion criteria, I submitted my diagram, which included my areas and my zones, and the traversal paths and point of interest, or POIs, clearly mapped out, as seen on my image here. The POIs include combat triggers, lore, resource clusters, and environmental puzzles. Arrows indicated like kind of traveling sequences of like what zone led to which, and it supports core gameplay mechanics. Placement accommodates vestige markings and reveals hidden or alternate paths. Cliffs and monastery incorporate managing mechanics for traversal. Zones designed to invoke progression difficulty and rhythm, and thematic consistency. The pacing bubbles and the planning diagrams included as well. The diagrams included the pacing bubbles that convey intensity, encounter density, and downtime. The visual tempo, I noted exploration was more heavy, and the tension did spike into the resource breather, and then that went into the boss confrontation. We will start off with the rain. As you first enter my level, you can hear and see the rain. I wanted to go with a rainy, snowy feel on top of a mountain, so that's why I went with the rain. AI bug, obviously you will not be able to, hear the bug because I fixed it, but I can show you what it did with the aftermath of it. Here to the enemies. When you get near the enemies, you can actually hear them walking. Because before, the enemy sounds, they would play while like, you were at spawn or somewhere else, but now you can only hear them when they're around. So this is one of the main mechanics that I made. Let me turn the music down real quick actually. If you listen closely, you can hear the sound for my my vestige orb, or my vestige marking as I called it. And when you walk up to it, it plays a sound. And also the shader, or the pulse shader that I have, it emits particles up to the orb to try and kind of attract you to the orb. And if you are successfully attracted to it, you'd probably walk up to it and you could see either interact. But as I said, there was a bug with my door, and I never did get it fixed. So you could also walk up to the door and it shows the same prompt. And if you would click on it, it would play my shader and my sound and open the door. As I mentioned before, I wanted the door to only be activated by the sphere, but it didn't work out. The way I show that there are vestige markings and like there are secret like doors is through this area. As you see, I lead you on to a guaranteed door, so you know like, okay, so there's doors I can unlock, and from where you start this level you can always see the door, so it kind of leads you to it. So yeah, it leads you to the door, and now you know, okay, there's doors with orbs. I should look for your orbs, or if I do see any orbs, there's going to be a door nearby. The area that I just went through was the ice lake, and this is my monastery. Behind all my vestige markings or my hidden doors, there's always a passage. So this is the sparring pit. As mentioned, I added this like kind of last second for my level design remake, or my map remake, because it was kind of just like a blank space in this area, and I just didn't exactly know what I wanted to do with it. So I kind of made a sparring pit, and this is more of my puzzle aspect. You get a transition here, and it kind of changes the weather as well. And that's all of my tasks that I had worked on for this build. Thank you for watching.
Hi guys, Bailey Hager with Team Fantasy here. Going over my Jira task list and stuff that I did this month. So one of the first things we're going to interact with in the level is my integration for dialogue boxes. So integrate dialogue boxes for player guidance and storytelling. As a player, I want clear, timely dialogue boxes that explain key mechanics, objectives, and story elements so I can understand what to do and stay immersed. Completion criteria, existing dialogue boxes integrated at relevant points in the level. Dialogue triggers automatically or via player interaction as designed. Text is clear and readable and well timed to avoid interrupting gameplay flow. Dialogue boxes tested for correct triggering, display, and dismissal. Um, Gate construction for enemy clear compression. As a player, I want gates that physically block my path until all enemies in an area are defeated to ensure I complete required combat challenges before progressing. Gate asset built and placed in level. Gate physically block players' movement. Gate opens smoothly when all enemies are defeated. Visual and audio feedback for gate states implemented. Um, interactable door. I want to implement a modular interactable door with audio feedback so it can be reused across environments and provide clear feedback when opened or closed. Door opens and closes on player interaction using a visible prompt or a trigger zone. Plays a distinct sound when opening and closing. Modular design allows for use across different environments, which is I just use a static mesh where you can change the static mesh for the door. Default state is closed. Toggles open close with each interaction. Tested in multiple locations for collision and interaction consistency. It's in 2 spots in my level. The gate locked and unlocked state feedback. I want gates to provide clear visual and audio feedback about whether they are locked or unlocked so I can understand if I can progress. Gates glow red and play lock sound when closed. Gates glow green and play unlock sound when open. Feedback matches gates, states, and transitions. Um, Revamp AI enemy line of sight detection and combat gating. As a player, I want enemies to detect me only when I enter their line of sight so I can strategically plan my approach and engage in combat before progressing. Gates should lock until all enemies are defeated to ensure combat completion. Enemies detect player only in line of sight. Gates remain locked until all enemies in the zone are defeated. I didn't do the enemy alert states trigger gate locking or unlocking correctly. I did that technically in the gate itself where it checks if the certain enemies are destroyed or not. Level redesign, cave level based on 7 area layout and level diagram. I wanted as a level, I want to build the cave level according to approved 7 area layout and pacing diagram, so the gameplay flow, enemy encounters, gates, valves, rotating bridge, checkpoints, and collectibles are all correctly implemented and visually clear. Um, Completion criteria, level constructed with all 7 areas connected as per the detailed layout below. As you can see. I didn't do it in a cave this time. I did a mountain valley. Environmental cues. As a player, I want to be naturally directed through the level using lighting, landmarking, layout so I don't feel lost. Implement lighting cues to draw attention to main paths or exits. Use natural landmarking like statues, large props to orient players. Visual cues tested for clarity without relying on HUD. Enemy density and patrol path balancing. I want combat encounters that are challenging but fair so I can enjoy smooth gameplay within the level's pacing. Enemy counts balanced per combat zone. Patrol paths optimized for engaging encounters. Total combat lasts about 2.5 minutes, fitting level pacing. So it and then my valve. Valve activated environmental blockades to prevent backtracking. As a player, I want valves to activate environmental barriers, preventing me from backtracking to clear areas and encouraging forward progression. Valve triggers environmental blockade after area cleared. Blockade physically prevents backtracking. Valve and blockade work reliably without trapping player. So I added that technically into my gate. So after you pass through the gate, it raises back up. Player experience, integrate dialogue boxes for player guidance and storytelling. As a player, I want clear, timely dialogue boxes that explain key mechanics, objectives, story elements so I can understand what to do and stay immersed. Um, Completion criteria, existing dialogue boxes integrated at relevant points in the level. Dialogue triggers automatically or via player interaction as designed. Text is clear, readable, and well timed to avoid interrupting gameplay flow. Dialogue boxes are tested for correct triggering and display and dismissal. So and then the cinematic camera system I had in the original final build until I had to go fix some bugs. It was too buggy for me to use where I wanted it to, so I scrapped using that in my level. It I had it doing the at my valves. It would change the camera to look at the valves. That doesn't work now. I got rid of those so because it just looked buggy and looked bad. All right, now we're gonna go show you all of that. So let's go open the level. Do do do. Do 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 do. And I'll go do a real quick one through all day. All right. So dialogue boxes are right there. As you can see, we have a dev tool set up for, can you see me yet? Can you see me yet? Oh, there we go. There we go. But we can just skip through the battles, which I'm going to be doing just to show off the level, and the things that I did. So obviously here's the yellow path with landmarks, kind of doing for the environmental cues. We're about to run into another enemy. Those are the AI line of sights. And then as you can see, we have some interaction points. So, and then here is the gate and the valve. See? And it'll go down. Whoop. And then it'll come back up in a second. And there you go. So, as you can see, we have all of those things that I stated over my Jira tasks. And then, as you can see, here's the bridge room. Here's area 3, area 1 and 2 were those. And then now we are getting to area 4. I do have some side paths. We're not going to go explore the side paths and show those off, but we are going to, boom, skip through that. As you can see, I got landmarks that are teaching you where to go, showing you where you need to go and stuff. As you can see from back, if you can see the valley that you need to get through. So from the beginning. Skip through that. And then a lot more environmental cues are down here, trying to tell you, hey, you need to go this way to get, and then there's the enemy. There you go. So you need to get this to get through here. So as you can see, it's leading you all the way to these, and here is my second interactable door. We'll show that off a little bit more here. Oop. See? Goes in, out. And now into Wild's level. But there you go. That was my level. Those were my Jira tasks. I did everything that I was supposed to this month for that. I just the dynamic cameras got scrapped out of the level. They didn't work how I wanted them to. So thank you guys for coming in, listening to this, and have a good rest of your day.
Hello everyone, my name is Brian Capaldo, and today I will be discussing my Jira task and the changes I've made to our project Journey to Remember. I will be reading over each task individually and showcasing their description and their completion criteria, and I will explain how I managed to complete these completion criteria through yesterday's build of the game, which is our latest build at the moment. So to start, I'm going to be showing off tasks that doesn't really involve me needing to head into the game until I get to the more involved tasks, and that is my balancing task and player experience task. So for starters, player character strength. This task is supposed to determine what the player strength is compared to the enemy. Should they be stronger than the enemy at all times? Should they have more, be able to find tons of passives or just a few? Should their health be upgraded so that they're more tankier, or should they be able to dish out more damage? Completion criteria is basically the same as balancing enemy strength, which is the opposite, the other side of the table. How strong are the enemies themselves? How much attack damage do they do? How much health do they do? And what is their attack styles? A player can parry enemy attacks through in game, which I'll show later, and therefore we need to ask ourselves, what kind of attack should they have? Should they have fast, hard-hitting attacks, or should they be slow so that the player can react more easily? The completion criteria for both of these tasks involve playtesters. I've gotten a bunch of my friends online through Discord to play test the game, along with the lab instructors that we regularly hang out with to try out the game. The completion criteria says that there was a form. I didn't make a form. I just asked and memorized and worked on it as soon as possible. And the questions were basically, how hard were the enemies from the beginning of the level to the end of the level? Did it feel like some enemies were too easy to kill at some portions or too hard to kill? Were some attacks unfair? Did you ever feel weak? Did you understand abilities based on their action point cost? Do you understand passive based around their cost? Were some passives too weak, too strong? Were some abilities too weak, too strong? And did you wish for new passives and abilities to play around with than the ones you currently have? Using this information, we have made decisions on the abilities and their strength, their costs, the passive's costs, and their effects, mainly those things. As for stats, there's one major change we did to the enemy, and that was to remove the defense stat, which was pretty underutilized for the most part. But when we looked deeper into the code, it ended up messing around with some of the damage numbers that were supposedly supposed to be done based on ability descriptions. So we removed defense altogether, increased their health for a certain mechanic that we'll get to soon, and made their attacks a bit harder to hit, a bit harder to parry. Overall, enemies are stronger, but so is the player. Now, next up is the player experience battle pacing. This one is basically a conglomerate of the both, where we have to ask ourselves, how fast are these battles actually going on an average basis compared to weak enemies and strong enemies, group enemies, individual enemies? We want to know, we want to speed that process up. We wanted it, not only so that it fit the 10-minute mark, but also, basically, we don't want the player feeling bored. That's basically the description here. Speed up the battles so that it's a bit more bearing. So the completion criteria for these was provide playtesters track time spent in battle. I didn't do that. Most of the time when players felt like they spent a long time in battle, they would just straight up tell me. So got that covered. Speeding up HUD elements. Before, HUD elements between player turn and enemy turn and all that were pretty slow. We sped that up. Same thing with player animations. The base attack, their abilities, animations. They're faster than normal. Which I'll show off in battle eventually. And of course, more questions to playtesters and adjusting based on feedback, which is something that the lab instructors graciously helped us with. Now, for two things that I couldn't get to. Checkpoints. Upgraded checkpoints and teleport between checkpoints. Upgraded checkpoints is basically a system where if you interact with the checkpoint, you will be able to heal yourself. But if you heal yourself, it will respawn nearby enemies. Basically, it's a pop-up that appears that asks you if you want to rest at this location, and if you do, you recover all your health, but nearby enemies that you defeated get revived. Teleporting between checkpoints. Same thing with the pop-up. When you will interact with multiple checkpoints as you traverse through a level. That will be saved, and as you interact with a checkpoint again, it'll ask if you want to teleport to a previous checkpoint to allow for backtracking and fast travel. When you interact with a checkpoint, change its color so that it's unlocked, and then when you interact with an unlocked checkpoint, you could teleport to a different checkpoint. It'll activate the recovery effect as well, all of that, all the goods. I couldn't get to this. And that's simply because the code for the checkpoints was something I didn't make. It was something I believe would be easy to get through, but sadly, I underestimated the complexity of the code, and basically any changes I would try to make would most likely break what we already have, and so with the other systems that I had to make, I didn't have time for this one. So I apologize for that, and my teammates. Now for the big one. We're going to talk about the new Spirit Break mechanic. Before, Spirit Break was simply just a damage multiplier based on how many times the player parries without getting hit. Playtesters and lab instructors told us this was weird and pointless and really off on the wayside. Many people who playtested our game never noticed this. And so I decided it was about time to completely scrap it and make something new out of it, which is the system that we currently have now. Basically, the player starts at tier 0, and every time they spend AP with abilities, they will increase a gauge. When that gauge increases to a certain amount, it'll upgrade to the next tier, and they'll be provided with buffs like an extra action per turn, discounts on abilities, and increasing damage multiplier on all attacks. At tier 3, we get ourselves upgraded abilities, which is the next one right here. To go in game to show this, there are abilities right here that you could equip onto your character. They have base cost and a description, all the goods right there. When you reach tier 3 on the Spirit Break, these abilities will get upgraded. These upgraded abilities are stronger and provide more benefits. So basically, to show it off right here, when I parry these attacks, I get AP, I use an ability, and here is the Spirit Break in the top right. If you hover your mouse over it, it'll give you info on what it does, and its current bonuses. And as you can see, since I spent 5 AP, the gauge will build up 5. As we continue battling here, to show it off, I'm going to use Rend again, which is 5 AP. And as you can see, Spirit Break increased by 1. Now I have an extra action per turn. Ability cost are discounted by 1, so slash was previously 3, now it's 2. And I have a 1.5 damage multiplier. Now that battle wasn't exactly long enough for me to truly show you upgraded abilities, but I will get to that in just a moment. So... something that I forgot to mention, might as well show it now since I'm going through the motions here. Battle tutorials. I couldn't really get to this, unfortunately. Again, Spirit Break mechanics and balancing all distracted me quite a bit. Originally, this mechanic was supposed to showcase how to interact in battle using a special battle that was basically a tutorial battle. You interact with it, it brings up HUDs before you do certain actions to show you what certain actions do, and it's streamlined so that everything is predictable, all of that. Once the battle's over, the tutorial battle disappears so that you can no longer interact with it unless you reset the game, and that's that. That's not in the game. However, a form of it is. We have text boxes teaching the player how to move and using remembering to equip abilities and how to parry. Very simplistic stuff. I would say mostly a band-aid for what we currently have. I apologize for that as well. So. Oh, I didn't mention that one. Okay, I still have them. So I'll explain it once I run through the final level where we'll interact with the last few mechanics that I worked on. We just have to make it to the end of this level so that I can showcase it. So, another mechanic that I worked on was boss battles. What boss battles are is a special kind of enemy that has two phases. The first phase would have an attack list of that they would use solely in the first phase, while the second phase would switch up to attack their attacks to the second. That's not the boss, sadly, so bullets. That's a checkpoint, by the way. You can see that the mechanic of teleporting and healing wasn't implemented. So, again, I apologize for that. So this should be the boss. So, these are 3 bosses in one. Before I interact with the boss, there's another thing that I need to talk about. Passives! For this sprint, I wanted to add more passives. In light of the new Spirit Break mechanic, I wanted to create passives that revolved around that, and also other passives. Something that I did forget to mention was that there was one thing in the completion criteria of Spirit Break that we didn't do in the end, and that is the losing a tier. Depending on if you get hit a certain amount, the player will lose a tier and the bar will empty. We didn't do that because we wanted it to be a linear progression of strength. We didn't want the player to We didn't want the player to end up losing spirit tier. We wanted them to keep it, even if they kept on getting hit a lot. Besides, players are still tested. Spirit Break is still a rewarding mechanic because the only way you'd get more AP is through parrying attacks and passives. The more passives you have that give you AP, the more AP you could spend. Therefore, the higher and faster you could get through the spirit tier. I ended up adding a few. Not all the completion criteria passives are added in, like enemies starting with less HP at the start of battle, doing less for a certain amount of turns, or the entire battle, turns skipped entirely. What I did ended up adding was basically Spirit Rush. Spark with Spirit Break already partially filled. Heal 20% when you increase in the Spirit tier. Gain AP when increasing in Spirit tier. The higher the tier, the more AP you get. Also, other things like regen, where you heal at the start of your turn, at the end of your turn. Lifesteal, where you heal for 20% of the damage you deal. And Thorns, where enemies take 20% of the damage they deal to you if you don't parry their attacks. So, let's talk about boss battles. Almost done with my little rant here. Like I said, they're formidable. They're supposed to be at the end of the levels. They're supposed to be strong. They have 2 phases. The first phase having a certain amount of attacks, and then once they reach below half, they go to the second phase, which have another list. This is not a unique blueprint. It is the same blueprint, just using booleans to decide if an enemy is a boss or not, but they do have separate data tables. Battle encounters do have that separate option to decide if they want a boss rather than a normal enemy through a boolean, and bosses are created through the boss list data table. And then once they reach the second phase, they switch up their attacks and they're more scary. That's what I'm going to showcase here, along with the upgraded abilities and player feedback integration of Spirit Break Flow, which is basically just have the screen flash or something when the Spirit Break tier increases. That's not really a thing. The screen doesn't flash. Instead, the number increases and the description of the text box info box changes. However, many still do notice the Spirit Break, thankfully, due to the gauge increasing and it being yellow, so I didn't feel like it was necessary for me to go through the time to add a flash effect or something. Yet, I plan to add it later when we're polishing things. So, let's get started in showcasing our, I have Spirit Rush and Spirit Overdrive equipped. As you can see, Spirit Rush, I already started with 5 in the gauge. That's perfect. Works. Ow. He got me. So now, we're gonna use Ren. That's gonna increase by 1. Now I have an extra turn. Since it's increased, I actually got AP back. So it looked like I didn't spend any AP, which is great. That means my other passive that I currently have equipped is working just fine. So another thing about enemy strength, as you can see, they're using a certain attack that's causing them to hit twice really fast. That's something that we talked about, decided was right to have. My Spirit Break increased again, I got AP back, and now I get an extra action. His HP went below half. There's nothing showing that he's different, but he should start showing off different attacks if it was set correctly by the level developer. So now I'm in Spirit Break 3. Abilities are now upgraded. If we look here, there they are. Each one have Neo in their name, and they now are much, much stronger, as I will show here. So now the battle should go much faster. Now, something that I wanted to add, but I didn't add to the list, was the ability to gain more passive costs as you progress through the game so that you can equip more passives and therefore become much stronger. You'd be able to equip more of those AP passives that allow you to basically chain up abilities so that you can choose more abilities in moments like these, where there's only just one enemy. That's a new attack. He got me good at that one. Yeah. So basically, since he reached below half health, he started using that attack. And as you can see, it's a lot more of a complicated move to block and parry from. Not Ravage. Ravage. There you go. So with this... Again. Oh boy. Might have the calculation wrong as on ability descriptions. There you go. Battle's over. Boss is defeated. And that's basically it for my list. Like I said, there are a few things that I missed out on, and I apologize greatly on that, but for the other things, I've tried my best to fulfill them. Most of my experience this class has been playtesting and getting people to play the game and dealing with numbers and systems and the battle itself and passives and abilities and the spirit break mechanic and figuring out what would be the most fun for that. Other than that, that's basically it. I don't see anything here I forgot to talk about. So yeah, thank you for watching.